let's begin up with our opening keynote address, and the topic is quite interesting and trending, that is, that we need to follow in 2024. So what is a balanced approach to IP litigation, the trends that we need to follow in 2024? We have our keynote speaker, Rahul Dubey. He's an IP intelligence leader from Baker Hughes. Can we have a big round of applause to join in today for the first keynote session with the conference? Can we have a big round of applause to join?
All right. Thanks everyone for waiting. As I said already, I'm Rahul Dubey, and I work for Baker Hughes currently. I lead the IP group there from India. And prior to that, I have worked for GE. In fact, at one point of time, the GE and the Baker Hughes, they merged, and then the company was separated. My GE colleagues must know all the story behind it. So I went with Baker Hughes, so here I am. So today's topic, which is about what is the balanced approach when we look into the IP litigation, because the scenario with IP litigations is changing quite a bit. It is not the same set of a story which was about 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I'll try to throw some light on what are those changing scenarios and along with that, what are some of the things that going forward we can watch and things which is going to be interesting from an overall litigation ecosystem point of view. So before we get there, just a quick briefing about Baker Hughes. Okay. So Baker Hughes, I think some of you might be familiar. Baker Hughes kind of synonymous with the oil field exploration. It's a upstream player. They essentially, provide the end-to-end oil exploration technology. But at the same point of time, Baker Hughes has many other verticals which are kind of encompassing the whole stream of energy industry. So there are turbines in our portfolio, there are compressors in our portfolio, and there is a whole suite of digital technologies which are needed, be it at the oil field or be it at some of the other industrial applications. Now, okay. So this is in like a quick snapshot about the size and like who we are with some more data. So Baker Hughes is about 120 countries with more than 55,000 employees. And in 2022, the revenue reported was around 21 billion. Being an energy company, we have a lot of emphasis on HSE, which is essentially the health, safety, and environment. And something which is kind of being reported as a metric even into the annual report. So that how many days in a year we have like 0 HSE incidents. It's a very important parameter for anybody who's in energy industry would understand that. And then Baker Hughes does a significant R&D, which is we usually kind of invest close to 500 million in a year into R&D efforts, varying from different sets of technologies, the core technologies, as well as some of the new energy transition technologies which are there on the horizon right now. And we are quite patent savvy. As you see, more than 2,000 patents kind of globally are granted to Baker Hughes. This is the number for 22, but kind of the scenario remains same on the annual basis. Right. And just one more thing, as I say, started that the Baker Hughes being known more for oil exploration, but recently Baker Hughes is taking significant measures to promote energy technologies which are more sustainable and having a least, or I would say the 0 impact on the environment. So there are a lot of decarbonization efforts are being driven when it comes to new technologies and R&D efforts. So with that brief introduction, let's, oh, solid there, okay. Into the topic. So, as I said, I'll bring in some of the interesting facts, some data, which kind of throws light on what has been the trends in the litigation, some interesting statistics, and how that is kind of trying to change the narrative going forward. So here is some data that I can be researching, and people who are interested, there are two sources I have mentioned. That's where can be checked. So one thing which is very interesting, in first half of the year, about 51% of dispute matters, any litigation matters, those were kind of put forward by NPs, non-practicing entities. So non-practicing entities are essentially the players who are not really a product company, but they are owners of IP, and their main purpose would be to kind of go behind a product company and trying to sue them that, okay, here is my patent and that's something which is being infringed. And another interesting fact in the first half of 23 again, that about 42% of the litigations were in the domain of technology industry. And when I say technology industry, I mean, it is a very broad term, but in a specific here was the technology related to computers and all computer related technologies, along with the medical. So that block of the technology have seen the close to 42% of the total litigations or or intellectual property disputes broadly, because patent is just one form of the intellectual property. Then last here, but not the least, there's a company that has conducted the surveys with in-house IP councils, and they have prepared a very detailed report which kind of on the various factors that how in-house IP councils are viewing the changing scenario, what are the of the IP litigation as an overall, and how and what are some of the major factors which kind of impacting this scenario, what is their feeling about things that they consider are important. So the basic fact here, which is about 40% of those in-house IP councils think that with all the exposure to technology, with all the changing scenario, they have more exposure, or their IP has more exposure towards the patent dispute or any related matters. So I think this kind of presents a quite interesting fact, and we would kind of ponder on these or do a deep dive a bit more in the subsequent slides. Now, before we move ahead, I think out of this, there is a very interesting scenario is evolving, which is on the use of artificial intelligence into the overall IP ecosystem. So when I say overall IP ecosystem, there are two ways to look at it, and why AI can be a threat potentially, and at the same point of time, it is an enabler also. So as an in-house company, there have been incidents where the inventors, in order to kind of, make their ideas better, they use some AI-based tools to learn and then quickly so that they can refine the ideas. But unknowingly in this way, they were kind of leaking the intellectual property of the company, because that idea still belongs to the company, but if somebody has used unknowingly external AI tool to refine it, that eventually kind of is a leak of the IP. And the second aspect is, it has been observed in the day-to-day practices, be it patent preparation, prosecution, be it some other things, a lot of companies have started using AI. And in some incidents, the facts which were presented by the AI tools were not really right. So that's kind of also an emerging scenario, which probably we need to be careful about, and we have to be looking at it, because it is going to have a substantial effect. And why is so? I'm not trying to project AI here as a threat, right? Because the fact is that without AI, I don't think any of the industries or any of the technologies are going to survive. So I think there has to be a balance somewhere when especially comes to the legal matters, that how AI can be used as an enabler versus at the same point of time, kind of we can avoid any complications that might arouse because of its use. So with these top level trends, let's dive a little more into the statistics over here. And this is more specific to the patent disputes which were seen in US or reported in US. Now here, if we see this chart, by the way, it starts by disputes caused by the re-examination process to appellate board to then the district courts. So if we see that there is an interesting trend which shows that there has been a decline post 21 into the patent disputes, especially on the district court bucket. So that's an interesting observation. Now, what can be the reason for this? It can't be kind of just one factor and can't be explained that easily. One reason simply can be it might be a temporarily downward trend, which might just come back again. And by the way, this data for 23 is also projected right now. The actual data is not available. So it can be momentary. It can again come back like it has happened from 22 to 21. We have seen an upward trend. Or it can also kind of be a reflection of the constraints that industrial companies have because of the capital expenditures, and especially how they need to really manage their bottom line when it comes to the capital expenditures. So that can also be a one reason that what I'm trying to say, maybe there are more settlements in the matters are not really reaching to the court. So that can be one factor to see this declining trend here. Now, as we continue on this, here is a list of further deep dive on the data, which shows again in the US what has been the top asserting entities and what have been the defending entities. So the interesting fact about the asserting entities first, as I said in my first slide, that the major portion was coming from NPEs in terms of litigations and the patent disputes presented. So that clearly reflects here on this chart. Oh, that laser pointer is very tiny. Okay, so, sorry. Yeah. So here if we see, except buyer, all the top other players are non-practicing entities. And especially the Web 2.0 tech has been, I would say, in the forefront, which is when it comes to the litigations and the dispute matters in the area of computer-related technologies. So that again goes back to the previous, the opening slide that we have. Now, if we look at from the defending entities point of view, we see that companies, the top has been Google, and then following all the way up to the Samsung has been the second. But again, the trend here, if we see, the companies who has been top in terms of the defendants, they are all coming from the high-end technologies, be it a retail like Amazon, Google, which is kind of forefronting the AI development, Samsung again forefronting some of the computing related technologies, and only other industry which is presenting here is the medical. So we see a couple of pharma companies and medical companies presence here as well. So again, it goes back, I think that is the focus areas for patent disputes. And why, I mean, somebody can ask, okay, why we not see the industrial companies out here? There are no right or wrong answers. It might be a good thing or it might be a bad thing. But overall, where we see the whole inflow of revenue or the investment is going, which is more and more into these and areas, so that kind of follows the suit. But at the same point of time, a lot of I would say the IP terms, clause, the interpretations when it comes to medical, especially pharma or the computing related technologies is still evolving. So sometimes it is more subjected to interpretations, and that's why I think there are more and more cases that we see in these two areas. That's my observation. Now, if we see some good examples, and I think most of people will be familiar with these, and again, this is kind of more related to the US jurisdictions. There has been some of these cases which has got a lot of limelight in 23 because they presented more significant interpretational changes from the history. Typically the way kind of either the courts or the subject matter experts when it comes to the interpretation of the terms of overall arguments, overall subject matter is being done in the past. So first here on my list is the case of Jack Daniels versus VIP products. Jack Daniels probably people would be more familiar with as a brand as compared to VIP products. VIP products is essentially a company that makes toys for pets, essentially for dogs. And there has been an interesting infringement case that Jack Daniel has sued VIP products, that eventually VIP products were using the parodic, I would say, marketing material which were based on the Jack Daniels trademarks and their intellectual property. For example, they came up with a dog toy which was in the shape of the Jack Daniel bottle, and it was a squeaky toy, and at the same point of time they also had the description that typically would you see on Jack Daniel's bottle. So they modified it and made it saying something like, I can't recall the whole phrase, but it was like old number 2 on my Tennessee carpet. And they call that toy as in place of Jack Daniel as a bad spaniel, right? So, so then when Jack Daniel sued them, their defense was that, this is a fair use, right? Because, it is more like parodic, it is more expressive. They're not really using a trademark directly, right? It's not a copy paste. But still, the court has gone against them that, merely if you say your defense is that, okay, you are using only it as a parodic or expressive purpose, and that should qualify for the fair use, is not really right. So that's why this has been one of the judgment which has been talked a lot about, in 23, and it says that, okay, how the Trademark Act is can be interpreted and subject to interpretations. Second one here is the Andy Warhol Foundation for Visual Arts and Goldsmith. So here the story, a brief story behind this is, so Andy, this foundation has started a series on the famous musician Prince, and they have used a photograph which according to them was transformative, modified photograph, which was taken by Goldsmith at some point in time back, and Goldsmith had the copyright for that. So when the court case kind of proceedings has happened, Andy Foundation's defense argument was that they have kind of using it more as a transformative work, is not really the original work which was copyrighted, and hence it should be kind of falling again in that fair use category. But at the same point of time, I think the judgment went into not in their favor, and that's how, like, the court has enforced that the fair use exception in copyright law is, that's my line, by the way, that it's murky, because it, interpretation is the real thing here. And though we, like, all of us are subject matter experts, but the interpretation from court to court, from the jury to jury might differ. But at the same point of time, if somebody is using a transformative IP and trying to claim it that, okay, this should be falling under the fair use because I'm not using the original thing, that is probably not going well. And that has kind of been the cause that, okay, the ND have a decision which was not in the favor. The third one here is Amgen and versus Sanofi, which has been the case about, so the company called Amgen, they have the patented technologies on antibodies, which are essentially there to reduce something called as the bad cholesterol. And Sanofi, Sanofi was kind of trying to produce a similar, I would say, I'll just call it generally a drug. And at that point of time, Amgen has sued them. But at the same point of time, this case has given a whole interpretation in terms of, like, how and what is the need to substantiate the claims. And a special emphasis on 1.2. So I think the court was in the favor of, or not in favor of Amgen, because they have said that the claims were not substantially supported, and those were so broad, and it was not right thing to say that claims were kind of any person who has the ordinary skills in the art can just read through the claim and can reproduce it. So though they were the patentees originally, but still kind of the decision has not gone into their favor. So that kind of is a very important thing, especially for in-house IP counsels, that when we have our claims written, we have to have that balance between taking the claims too broad versus making them understand that, okay, is it something that can be reproduced, re-engineered by a person who has the ordinary skills in the art. Now, the last here is Abitron versus Hetronic. This is again related to trademark dispute. And I'm just kind of looking at the time, so will not take much, but it was a case where Abitron was previously a distributor of Hetronic, and then we went kind of solo, and Hetronic came behind saying, okay, you're creating confusion, especially in the US market among the buyer, because you're using some of the trademark related intellectual property that is being used. And there also, I think the court case went more into Hetronic favor. So this is more like, I would say, a learning for the trademark owner or the intellectual property owner, that how they should be really going about protecting their trademark into the jurisdictions where we have a significant market presence. That is really, really important. If that was not the case, I don't think the judgment could have been in the favor of Hetronic. Moving ahead. Oops.
It's not working?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so after these cases, I just like, there has been, what has been really some shifting trend. And again, this is based on an analysis which is done by one of the companies, the reference is there. So this is more kind of factors which I touched in the earlier slides, that in-house IP counsels feel that, what can be the reason or what can be the factors when they say the overall exposure to IP disputes or patent matter related disputes might come from. So first is definitely increased use of AI technology, which is followed by the growth in the market share, especially should not be just the market share, but market share comes more as the global market share. The companies are going around the globe exploring new markets, so that brings the new set of challenges, more exposure. Then the cyber data and breach, that's a very important factor which every in-house IP council is really concerned about. Then we have here, sorry, can't read that. Yes, then IP monetization, sorry, that the yellow part, the orangish part was more about the in-house. Not can be just in-house, but a lot collaborative, because currently the world is collaborative. You cannot do everything in-house. You have to always collaborate with different sets of parties. So that also kind of creates the exposure, adds to the exposure. And then, IP monetization and patent troll activities are also really one reason. In IP monetization also, you're exposing all your know-how to the person who's kind of buying the license, and they can do some tweaks around. And new evolving regulations, of course. There are certain new things which has been proposed in US especially, which kind of might be related to interpretations. This can also bring in new dynamics when it comes to the overall exposure. And with that, I'm reaching to my last slide. Oops. I don't know. Okay, this is quite a bit of lag. Okay, so just to conclude here, that definitely the trends that we really need to watch in 2024 and create a balanced approach, because as we have seen, it is not always the exposure factor is not only coming from IP. There are certain processes, penetration of AI, issues related to cyber, all of those are contributing. So I think the first trend that we need to watch is impact of AI in IP ecosystem. How do we kind of make it work in our favor? And then of course, there are further, legalities associated with it. How those things are going to evolve would be interesting to watch. For example, fair use of boundaries in light of evolving technologies, which are infused by AI. Same, the challenging the unauthorized use of AI generated copyrights. Then, from beyond AI, I think role of NPEs and some of the recent developments which we see are happening in the ecosystem, be it the trade secret identification, especially again for US, the new law which was done early 2023 during Biden's government, that trade secrets can go all the way up to criminalization, and companies can really come behind employees, and there's a lot of debate that, somebody wants to be a whistleblower. In that practice, they have to kind of give out the secrets versus, how companies can make it more as a theft. So that needed to be watched. The Patent Eligibility Restoration Act, which kind of trying to change or modify the criteria for the patent eligibility subject matter. So bringing from the classical definition, trying to kind of reform, make it more in the language of process, machines, manufacturing, because the challenge is a lot of new innovations which are related to the computing field, AI field, and also the medical field. Sometimes there's a lot of interpretational issues when companies are trying to protect those. So that kind of getting changed probably, we have to watch this. Though it is still kind of under discussion. And then of course, the development which is happening because of some of the changes which has already happened, like in Europe, unified patent codes, that kind of also impacts the way an infringement is interpreted, and accordingly the jurisdictional issues and all of that. So I think along with that, PTAB is always an interesting area to watch. So that kind of concludes my talk. Thank you. I know the second speaker is already waiting. But do we have like a quick 1 minute?
Sure. So do we have any questions? Floor is open for the questions, and it is very interesting, trends that we need to watch in 2022-24 for IP litigation. So any questions we have from the audience?
None, so, yes.
So, not a question, but Rahul, it's interesting the way you mention about as companies, as in-house counsels, for us creating that boundary for the business teams in terms of usage of AI. It's very tempting. It's very lucrative. It's very fast. I always worry about use of WhatsApp also, for that matter, where in my previous organization, when we are in a renewable sector or a power sector and you are talking to your project engineers about a design, or you are sharing with them a prospective, custom logistics related nuances, always worrisome is the fact that these are the platforms which we are not guiding with any rules or principles, and high chances of losing out proprietary information for that matter. Same as with applications like ChatGPT, super helpful, not just for the business team, even for us, drafting a letter. And that's what I keep hearing from the business teams daily. Can we start using ChatGPT to just maybe respond an email to a customer? Yes, you can, but then how and where the information gets tweaked, and I think it's very challenging for corporates to figure out that what's the right set of balance, and how do you protect in terms of not using your information, and if you lose, how you keep it intact.
Yeah, that's very, I would say, significant comment, and that's why I kind of continue to mention that area is definitely requires a very balanced approach. As you said, you cannot just completely do away with it, because you cannot survive. That's where things are going. So I think it would be quite a good journey in terms of learning for all IP professionals. So thanks for the comment. Good.
So any more questions? Yeah.
Also AI related, because for some of the various reasons that have been mentioned on the ability to use it to quickly respond to an email and other things, but have we started to see any trends, particularly with NPEs, to use AI to identify new targets for patent infringement?
That's very interesting perspective. So some of the early trends, I don't have like a full-fledged case which is totally based on AI and coming from NPs, so far not. But some of the predictive, like Lex Machina, some of these analytics companies which kind of work heavily, they are predicting it, that maybe in 24 we are going to see some of these cases. And that's why I had like in my last slides that how AI can be used to say just and being claimed as a transformative action for a copyright matter. So yeah, but to my knowledge, so far none. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for this wonderful, beginning of the conference. So can we have a big round of applause for Rahul?
I request Rahul to be on stage for a good photograph, and ask Mitali to present for the outstanding contribution as keynote speaker to Rahul. Thanks, Rahul. Big round of applause, guys.